Well, good evening, everybody. Thank you for hanging with us as we kind of held the door a little bit, but we are ready to go tonight. Thank you very much for joining us to talk about this very important topic this evening. I'm Greg Keener, coordinator for WFDD's membership and education programs, and before I turn over the evening to our moderator, our general manager, Denise Franklin, I want to give you a quick note about tonight's presentation. WFDD's new series, which you've heard this week on the high school dropout rate, as well as tonight's forum, are all part of the American Graduate Program. An American Graduate is a public media initiative funded by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting to help local communities across America find solutions to address the dropout crisis. The initiative builds on public media's long-standing commitment to education by convening conversations like this one and strengthening partnerships between public radio and television stations and local schools, businesses, community organizations, all to the aim of helping students stay on track to graduate from high school. WFDD is proud to be one of just 41 American graduate community engagement communities, and we are very proud this all culminated in this event tonight, and we'll have a fantastic conversation. Following tonight's event, make sure to look for the launch of a website, which will include video from tonight, archived audio from the news series that you've heard this week, as well as other resources related to the high school dropout issue. We're hoping to launch a one-stop shop for everything you'd want to know about the area and all the resources you have at your disposal to help with this issue, because that is the focus of tonight, is how can we all come together and improve this issue. So now I'll ask you to turn off cell phones or turn them to vibrate if you haven't done so already, and I will introduce our general manager and our moderator for this evening, WFDD's Denise Franklin.
Good evening. How are you this evening? Everybody doing okay? Good, good. We are so happy to have you in our company, and we are thrilled to continue our conversation about a very difficult subject, the high school dropout rate. Not to be confused with the graduation rate, but we'll get into that later. This is something that we are tackling. We are committed to doing something about. We think we are uniquely positioned to have conversations about complex issues, being part of, well, being a public radio station that typically tackles complex problems, but we try to do it in a civil fashion. We try and do it in a way that everybody can get their voice heard. And then we try to take away solutions, something that you can do to make a difference. And so while our numbers may be small this evening because we are in the holiday season, the problem is still huge, and everybody can still make a difference. And so I hope that you will participate enthusiastically, exuberantly, and take advantage of the fact that you are going to have people in front of you that you would never encounter on a normal basis. Typically, you would never be in their company, but WFDD has worked hard with Winston-Salem State University to make this happen, and I hope that you will indeed take advantage of it. So, let's move forward. Again, we've done this once before. We called it the education equation, the high school dropout rate. This one is the high school dropout rate. What does it mean? And we are going to, at some point, come up with some answers, and that is really what we are determined to do. So with these community conversations, that's what we call them. I don't know if you listen to us on 88.5 WFDD. You can also listen to WSNC, got to give them a shout out, love the jazz programming. But we are committed to news and information. And so if you listen to us, you know that we've done these community conversations before. And as a lead up to those community conversations, what we do are we do a series of reports. And that way we kind of tee up the conversation so that people can be prepared to think about it. So if you will allow me to, we're going to give you a multimedia presentation, a condensed version, if you will, of what we have aired over the past week. And you'll get an idea of what you've seen. So take a look.
want your cup, Tasia? Okay. You had a good day at school? Gonna tell mommy what you learned?
18-year-old Lashika Ziegler became a mom at 16. She lives in an apartment in North Winston-Salem with her 2-year-old and her 6-month-old daughters. Each day, she struggles to be a mother and a high school sophomore.
Monday through Friday is hard. I'll be trying to get myself ready and get them and try and get a little breakfast in, and I can be doing my homework and my daughter want to write, scribble, draw.
Lashika is one of around 40 teen parents in Forsyth County currently benefiting from a program that pays to get her children from home to daycare and back again 5 days a week. The money is from a $33,000 grant from the Kate B. Reynolds Charitable Trust. It's administered by the Work Family Resources Center in Winston-Salem. But Winston-Salem Forsyth County School social worker for teen parents and their families, Faith Lockwood, says she's concerned about the future of the program.
Those students would not be in school if they did not have child care transportation now. They could not find any other resource to get their children to daycare, so they would simply not be in school.
The grant for the Kate B. Reynolds Charitable Trust is only a temporary fix. Lockwood worries about future funding sources for transportation costs. 20-year-old Dante Cruz is Lashika's boyfriend and father of her 2 children. He quit school in the 10th grade.
It's really hard. I wanted to stay in school, but I just couldn't. Like it. Once I had these kids, it was like a whole new life. But with that daycare, I can basically now go ahead and start back doing what I normally do and get back to school.
Lashika says the program is helping her achieve her goals and be a good role model for her daughters.
I'm 18 in the 10th grade, but I feel like I can keep going forward, because without it, I wouldn't be nowhere, just wasting my time when I can be out there accomplishing goals, doing good stuff.
Studies published as far back as the late 80s showed that children's reading scores at the end of 3rd grade could accurately predict their high school achievement by 80%. Wayne Foster, project director for a program aiming to transform 16 schools in the Winston-Salem Forsyth County School District, points to those studies and the latest national test results, which show that 34% of 4th graders are below a basic level for literacy, and says something must be done.
A third of our kids coming into kindergarten behind. A third are behind in 4th grade. A third are behind in 8th grade. Almost a third, a quarter to a third of students never graduate. Do you think those are different sets of kids? No, it's cohorts of children that come into kindergarten. We never catch them up, and they never do well.
Vowels? They are called vowels. Let's name the vowels together.
These 2nd grade students at Sedge Garden Elementary School get extra assistance in reading thanks to their primary reading teacher, Sally Sykes.
They were basically maybe 2 years behind on the kindergarten level, but we've moved them up closer to the 1st grade level, and we have hopes of progressing past that and getting them on grade level by the end of the year.
Sykes has been a teacher assistant for 27 years.
I just have a passion to work with those kids. They can't go to middle school way below grade level. You know, that's when they're going to get into trouble. You know, the key to their progress in math is reading. You know, they can't do their story problems if they can't read. They can't learn their content in science and social studies if they can't read. You know, that's where it will pay off, and we've got to catch them young.
A universal screening for literacy has been adopted for kindergartners through 2nd grade. The boys Sally Sykes is working with today were identified through such screening, and as a result, they're getting the individual attention they need to catch up. Foster says the next step is finding structural programs that will help the schools address the need for such targeted support for a large number of students.
I'm already seeing very positive signs. But I predict that if we do a really good job in K2 and K3, the issues that we're seeing in middle and high school with behavior, gang-related stuff, children dropping out, those things are a function of poor achievement. These students know they can't do the work, and they're identifying alternative behaviors to avoid doing the schoolwork. So I'm thinking what we're doing now is really a different support structure for K-3. It's going to be a game changer for 4th grade on up.
It's sixth period at Western Guilford High School. Jessica Pennick is teaching standard biology to about 30 students. The class is a mixture of freshmen through seniors. Students talk disruptively with their friends in spite of Pennick's repeated warnings for them to pay attention.
Hold on. Guys, too much talking. To be able to talk over a class with 30 kids in it and get 2 minutes where they're not making too much noise is tough. To not make enemies out of them and get the control you need is not a science, but an art.
Pennick specializes in working with low-skill students, but she says having low and high-performing students in the same class makes her job harder.
We are not doing a very good job preparing our teachers.
And Dr. Terry Cash agrees.
We're not doing a very good job of teaching how do you identify risk in your students, and then more importantly, how do you address that risk in students?
Dr. Cash is Assistant Director with the National Dropout Prevention Center at Clemson University. He believes this disparity exists because the people running the nation's public school system are slow to evolve so as to better help a generation struggling with numerous socioeconomic issues. This, combined with the pay freeze and long hours, has 29-year-old Pennick thinking about leaving the teaching profession.
I'm tired of trying and trying and trying and having so few successes and feeling like it's never good enough. Rather than I made this connection and this kid isn't on the street, and rather than that being my success, okay, great, now did he pass or not? You know, and not did he pass your class, did he pass the state test?
In the 2009-2010 school year, almost a third of teachers left our nation's schools for various reasons. And Dr. Cash says this contributes to some students dropping out of high school.
And this is particularly true for students who are most at risk because they are looking for, within the system, someone they can trust.
Nationwide, the high school dropout rate in 2008-2009 was just over 4.2%. The following year, it dropped to 3.75%.
And that is a condensed version of what has been on the air of 88.5 WFDD. I do hope you'll appreciate our efforts because we are committed to doing something about this issue. Do you appreciate it? So here's what the evening is going to look like. We've got a couple of groups of panelists, and I will introduce them individually. And then at the end, what is very important is that we're going to have takeaways. And we're going to do this in about 90 minutes. So we're not going to keep you long. But we want to give you some tools that you will take away so that you will be able to say, this is what I can do individually or with an organization that I work with that will make a difference in the high school dropout rate. We want to talk about this in a civil fashion. We want to do it in a collegial fashion, but we want to give you some tools so that you can take something away and do something about it. Otherwise, we're just talking. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but we're just be talking, okay? All right, so join me as I welcome the first group of panelists. Please welcome Mr. Eric Aft, the Chief Operating Officer for the United Way of Forsyth County. Will you please join us on stage? Give him a round of applause. Dr. Robert Landry, retired superintendent of the Davie County School System and the advisor to the Howard N. Lee Institute, which I'm sure he will tell you about. Give him a round of applause. Dr. Ed Bell, Professor of Education and Chair of the Department, ooh, this is long, and Chair of the Department of Educational Leadership, Counseling, and Professional Studies at Winston-Salem State University. Please join us on stage, Dr. Bell. If you will take that chair, and what we will do is begin by giving them just a couple of minutes to talk about what they are bringing to this conversation. Eric, if you will begin, please.
Sure. Great. Well, first of all, I want to thank you and WFDD for its leadership in putting on this conversation and moving this conversation forward. We know it's vital to the success of our community. As you mentioned, I'm with the United Way of Forsyth County, and a number of years ago, instead of just investing in programs that are making a difference in people's lives every day, which has been wonderful, we decided to create a greater focus, to say, you know what, we need to tackle issues that are critical to our community. And the leading issue for us is education, more specifically increasing the high school graduation rate. So since 2006, got a little sound. We have increased our investment to programs that help with student success from about $2.9 million to just under $4 million. So it's a significant investment that we're making. And why are we doing this? It's because education is not a school system issue, it's a community issue. We believe that the nonprofit, the for-profit, and the philanthropic sectors all have the opportunity to make a tremendous difference around this issue. And that if we can convene people, get conversations moving, but also take action around it, that we can see changes happening. We started our investments with the high school and middle school levels with this increased about $1 million. And we've seen some amazing things happen. We've seen about an 8%, 9% increase in the graduation rate at Parkland High School, some great leaps at Philo Middle School in both reading and math, which are all fantastic. With Parkland, what makes it so special is we saw not only a leap in graduation rate, but in the proficiency of students. And what that says to us is that these students are getting prepared for success after school. It's not just getting them a diploma, it's preparing them for the future. And at the end of the day, what we are interested in, and all of us are interested in, is the success of our students. I have 2 kids in the public school system. You may have a granddaughter, a niece, a nephew, what have you. But even if you don't, you may be interested in the economic future of our community, that these students are prepared to help us to retain the quality businesses we have here and to recruit new businesses that will be the foundation of Forsyth County's future going forward.
And so why did the United Way think this was an issue that they wanted to tackle?
The bottom line is that education is the foundation for the future of any community. We know, though, that economically disadvantaged students need greater assistance, that they are facing challenges that are not academic in nature, that they are comprehensive. It's food on the table. It's a parent who doesn't understand the value of education because they grew up in an environment or in an economy where high school graduation, high school diploma was not a requirement for a good job. They're in unsafe neighborhoods. There's uncertain, there's financial instability. And so we realize that supporting families along with supporting students is an integral part of what we need to be about as a United Way, and that we need to engage the community about to make sure we're creating solutions for the betterment of Forsyth County's future.
All right, okay. All right, Mr. Landry.
First of all, let me say thanks to all of you here tonight. This is an important topic, one that needs to be addressed over and over till we get it. And so I certainly appreciate the fact that the panel that's here tonight and is a distinguished panel with much experience, and also those of you here. I am representing the Howard N. Lee Institute. Many of you in here may know that Senator Lee has been involved in the field of education for many, many years. And unfortunately, he was not able to make it tonight. But he came recruiting me and said, hey, you got all these years of education, being teacher, principal, superintendent, I need some help. And so the Howard N. Lee Institute, what we're doing is, and we're all hired volunteers. That's the great thing about it. is that we are going to be going into communities and to engage the communities, and that is the community itself, whether it's the different organizations in the community, the chambers, also the faith-based community and the school system, and the government employees in there also. Because education, as Eric said, is the fundamental, is the most important thing. And the Forsyth Futures has been outstanding, and I've looked at what Walter and Eric and your staff and others have done. And what we're going to be doing is we're going to be moving around the state. We're not going to be centralized or concentrated in just one place. We're going to be able to move around. And what Senator Lee wanted to do was because he was also our state board chair for years. And so Senator Lee said, all right, I want to make a difference now. I served in government, but now I want to get out there in the field and make a difference. And so we're going to start working with the elementary levels, trying to engage peoples together. And he wants to provide funding for the organizations in the community. But he wants to make sure that there's a metric tied to that funding so that you're just not putting money in there and money is just spent, just like you guys do here in Forsyth County. And we're going to concentrate at the lower level beginning in 3rd grade, because we all know that it's got to be done right at the bottom before it gets to the top. And so that's what we're going to be working with. And one of the things that Senator Lee wanted to do was for the Institute is create what he calls the Lee Scholar. And so we've been going to the UNC General Admissions Office, Duke University, Elon, and High Point University, trying to talk to the presidents there and deans of the school of education, that if we can get these Lee Scholars and they can maintain a 3.0 average beginning in 6th grade, working their way through high school, and graduating in 4 years, not 5 years, will you guarantee them a slot? And the answer has been yes. They were guaranteeing a slot. In fact, one president told us, you get them here, we'll give you the scholarship. So that's a big plus for us, for the students. And so what the Institute is we want to make a difference by engaging the community and making it sustainable so that we can move on to another community and help them out. Basically, there's a couple things we're going to do quickly, and that is we're going to have a state conference next September 2012 in Greensboro. It's going to be a statewide conference. It will be involved the North Carolina Chamber. It will be involved the faith-based community, educators, community organizations. My part throughout the year will be working with the Minority Male Initiative. If you look across the state and the nation, the minority males, and that is African-American males and the Hispanic Latino males, leads the way in the dropout. And so that'll be my part to work with. And I've told you the third one, which will be the Lee Scholar.
All right. So what I want to emphasize is that this is a community conversation. I could interview them all day long. I've done that for a number of years. But there's a reason that those mics are in the aisles. You guys need to be thinking about your questions so that you can ask these professionals questions that you would not otherwise have an opportunity to do. So please be thinking about questions that are burning in your brains that you would not otherwise have the opportunity to ask them if they were not here. Secondly, I want to emphasize the importance of having this conversation at Winston-Salem State University, which began as a teacher's college, which was the way, education has always been a way to get a foot up. And so the history is deep here, and there's a reason why we're holding this conversation here. And I want to, again, express my deep appreciation for the partnership with Winston-Salem State University. Dr. Bell.
Well, first, thank all of you for coming. I want to thank WFDD for supporting this initiative, and thank you for the invitation. In the several conference calls we had, two things struck me. One, you asked that we tell people why we're on the panel, and in this section, speak to why the dropout rate is really a community-wide issue.
And it's a directional mic, so hold it a little bit closer.
Hold it a little closer.
There
okay,
you go.
Thank you.
Okay.
First, my name is Ed Bell. I'm a professor and administrator at WSSU. I've been conducting research on schools and how they work for over 30 years. But maybe most importantly, I was also educated in the Boston Public Schools. Julia Ward Howe Elementary School, and as they call it, the Boston Latin School, the oldest school in America. The segregation in that system was oppressive. At every level, I experienced teachers who tried to make me believe that I was less than and that I could not be successful. I understand firsthand how hostile school can be. If you've ever seen the Stanley Forman's Pulitzer Prize-winning picture in 1996 of Ted Landsmark being attacked with an American flag by anti-busing demonstrators, have any of you seen that picture? Anybody here? If you haven't, look it up. You can get a sense of what the Boston Public Schools and education in that community was like. Now, on the other hand, the support of my family, my community, and thoughtful and supportive teachers like my 7th grade Latin teacher, Mr. Partridge, and the fact that I remember his name in 7th grade was a long time ago for me, helped me develop the knowledge, skill, and confidence to become successful in school. Now, why is the high school dropout rate a community-wide problem? Public education has two critical functions. One is maintaining a democratic republic. Jefferson argued, if a nation expects to be ignorant and free in a state of civilization, it expects what never was and never will be. Whenever the people are well informed, they can be trusted with their own government, that whenever things get so far wrong as to attract their notice, they may be relied on to set them right. The second function is to strengthen the economy. Now, Horace Mann is considered the father of public education. When he was in Massachusetts, he was a state senator and head of the Senate. He argued for universal education, but his argument was based on economic terms, saying that it would increase the wealth of individuals, communities, the state, and the country as a whole, and this is interesting, while teaching respect for private property. I believe the high school dropout rate is merely a symptom of the remnants of the institutional racism, classism, and sexism that linger in our schools. My perception is that many of our political leaders are unwilling to acknowledge this situation, let alone do anything about it. National Public Radio reported on 27th of June that whites will be a minority in the U.S. sooner than anticipated. William Frey, a demographer, reported that the majority of babies under 2 years old now are children of color. There are already many indications that our society is rapidly moving toward an oligarchy, that is, the control of the nation by the wealthy. How will we be able to hold on to the dream of American democracy and compete on the international stage if we have school systems that cannot educate effectively poor students of color?
All right. So here's the question. As people, I'm looking for people to rush to the microphones, and it's not happening yet. So I'm going to put that on you all, that you all have not been provocative enough yet. But somebody's got to have a question. Okay, let's do that before I get started, because I could go on. Yes, ma'am.
Good evening. The question is...
Well, this is what I'd like for you to do. Now, you know that we're being videotaped and audio taped. If you would please give your name and at least where you're from, either a city or a county.
Okay, my name is Barbara Pendergrass, and I'm from the Lexington City School System. And my question is to Dr. Bell. Why do you think the high school dropout rate reflects racism and sexism within the economy? Is that correct?
In the schools?
In the school system? Can you?
There are people in this school system. I visit schools who I'm convinced not only do not like people in general, but definitely do not like children. There are policies and procedures. We have an organization on our campus called Real Men Teach. They hosted a seminar that discussed the school-to-prison pipeline that documented the number of people who are suspended from school and how quickly their suspension from school gets them in prison. Surprisingly, the number of people who get suspended and end up in prison turn out to be children of color. I don't accept the fact that the children of color are that much worse in their behavior than other people.
All right, Dr. Bell, let me stop you there and get Mr. Landry, Dr. Landry, to chime in on that.
I would agree with Dr. Bell in that. The research I've been looking at shows that in the state of North Carolina, an African-American youth is imprisoned every 22 minutes. And I've been working a lot with the Hispanic Latino population, and that's what I really represent at this level for Governor Bourdeaux. And I've been into that research and watching very carefully what's happening beginning in kindergarten as they're working through and who is being held back. And then if you systematically watch it as it progresses through middle school, they age out and they hit that magical 16 years of age by the time they're 8th grade. So to be real with you, they never get to high school. They're not counted in that group in 9th grade that goes to the high school. They actually slipped out in 8th grade, and nobody missed them.
Did I understand correctly that the school system can't educate children of color, Dr. Bell? I'm just trying to get it clarified. I couldn't hear you too much on the mic.
Okay, let me be clear.
Yeah,
okay.
please.
I'm trying to be not to talk about people's motives.
Right.
Okay. The issue is the result of what actually happens.
Okay.
People who are unsuccessful in school are poor students of color.
Okay, so maybe we can go back to what I think was you heard a tidbit of in terms of the reading level by the 3rd grade. Why don't we just kind of do it that way? And if they're not reading by the 3rd grade level, then they're behind by the time they get up.
I'm a high school
student.
Yes,
Yeah.
I'm a high school. I'm a high school teacher, and that's why I asked the question.
Yeah,
that would be a good.
That's
point.
The way I think we need to go at it. Do you agree?
Yes. If you can't read for knowledge by the time you get to the 4th grade, you will always be behind. In your report, you talked about the cohort, the third of students, and it is the same cohort. But we do have examples in Forsyth County of a Title I school that worked with, everyone knows that a Title I school is by definition primarily poor students. In the mid-70s, Latham Elementary School was identified as one of the 10 best schools in North Carolina because over 85% of their students were at or above grade level. So the fact is, we have demonstrated that it can be done. We simply do not do it on a consistent level.
All right. Anybody want to add to that? Eric, you haven't talked lately.
Well, I think the key is socioeconomic issues that our children are facing. The fact is that we have a great deal of inequity across schools. We might say, well, Title I gets a lot of money, and that's great. They can do tutoring, what have you. But you have to look at resources in a broad way. The fact is that a poorer school has fewer volunteers there, therefore fewer role models there. There is less advocacy going on because parents of higher socioeconomic means tend to be more engaged in the school, have higher educations, know how to advocate for themselves and for their children. And then you can get into money and more flexible money within these schools. So the fact is that we have inequity across schools, and until we address that issue and figure out how to, again, put the resources that are the right resources in the hands of all schools, we're going to have this issue.
In the Hispanic Latin community, one of the things that we need to do is, I did it as a superintendent, and that was I would hold meetings with the Hispanic population like on a Friday night, and carry the conversation in Spanish about the importance of schooling. And the schools need to engage with that community. First of all, they're here. They're not leaving. And they're growing. And Forsyth County, I just actually got from the governor's office today, where the median age in Forsyth County is 27. That means so there's a young population that's going to have children, and they're not leaving, and we have to educate. Now, with the other dilemma that we have is, and that is the undocumented population, and that is that, you know, a lot of these kids have dreams, and then all of a sudden the dream can no longer be a dream. So that filters down that, you know, don't worry about it because you're not going to be able to go on any further. And we've got to change that. Our job should be to educate and to promote and to get them on. Now, to answer the high school teacher, I want to just say quickly, one of the things that happens is that we all know what happens in third grade. What's those three letters? The EOG. And if they're not ready in third grade for the EOG, if there's between second and third grade teacher, if they decide that child's not ready, that child's going to be retained. Because we don't want those EOG scores to look bad. Well, right away you're setting up that child, not one time, because more likely that child got held back in kindergarten for the same thing. So that child is already aging out and on the way out of here.
Okay. All right. Next question.
Good evening. My question is directed to Eric.
If you'll identify yourself,
I'm
please.
sorry. My name is Kevin Cunningham. I live in Kernersville. And my question is directed to Eric. You mentioned that you mentioned Parkland High School and I think Philo. All right. Question number one: when you went to those schools,
if you'll talk directly in the mic, sir.
Sorry. When you went to those schools, what programs did you choose to fund, to support, and why? Among several that you probably had a choice of, of supporting. Why did you choose those specific programs? And also, what type of successes did you have? And is there a case study that other schools can learn from?
Thanks, Kevin. Appreciate the question. First of all, why did we go there? First of all, the funny story is we chose Parkland in collaboration with the school system because it wasn't the most challenged school. We said, let's not start with the hardest. Let's do the next hardest. Well, when we actually launched, it was the most challenged school in our community. So we said, okay, we'll start with the hardest and we'll see what we can do. But what we did is work with our partners, the YMCA, Big Brothers Big Sisters, the school system, as well as the actual administration there, to really talk about what are the right strategies. The one thing we learned in our research is that you can't do one thing. If you do one thing, it'll have some nice results, but you need to have an integrated approach. So what we looked at was intensive tutoring, credit recovery, attendance counseling, graduation coaching, as well as mental health counseling there. So it was a very comprehensive look, and it was a meaningful investment that we made there to say, we want to work with you to really lift up all the work that your administrators and teachers are doing. Because again, this is a collaboration, a partnership. United Way wasn't going to come in there to fix things. And I'll mention the results in just a second, but then we looked at Philo because that is the largest feeder school to Parkland. And again, as I said, we started in the upper grades. We wanted to show success, show that the community being engaged in this issue can make a difference. And we've been able to do that. And once we did, we're going to start going younger and younger and working with other partners because it just as was said here by Dr. Bell and Dr. Landry, you have to work with the youngest. But what we've seen at Parkland is a movement where the proficiency level of the kids went from, on their EOCs, that was the measure we used for over the last couple of years, went from about 46% to over 70% in a 3-year period. Officially 2.5-year period. So that is most exciting. And then the graduation rate has moved about 8 percentage points. We're happy with that. I'm actually more excited about where the proficiency has gone. At Philo Middle, which is an incredibly challenged middle school, Philo Magnet Academy is what it's officially called, is when we started there, and I want to note that United Way's Women's Leadership Council has taken the lead on this, a huge investment in our middle school work, not only there, but now at Mineral Springs as well as East Forsyth Middle. But we saw reading scores, end of grades, 18% of the kids were passing. 18%. We're now at 39. It's a tremendous leap. It's still a horrible result. But we're very excited about the direction we're moving. The math scores, fortunately, are much better. They were at about 40%. Now they're at 70% of the kids passing those end-of-grade math tests. So again, we're excited. And what we heard from Parkland this past year is probably the best thing. They said, we have the most prepared 9th grade class we've had in memory. And that was the whole intent. So we're looking forward to the next steps, spreading things out, working with more partners to see how we can create better results.
Did that answer your question? I'm looking for, okay, all right. Next question, sir.
Yes, my name is Fred Sally. My question is, when you look at the school system here in Winston-Salem, it appears that the school system is following the national trend of resegregation in terms of the neighborhood schools. My question is this right here, particularly for the educators, how does diversity in the school system affect this? How does diversity play in terms of addressing this issue of the dropout rate?
All right, who's going to be brave enough to answer that question?
I'll start.
All right.
I'll start. I'll give you my perception of it. I don't know if it's an answer. One of the things that makes a difference for success in school is the student's belief that he or she can be successful. Okay. That comes from different places. One, it comes from your family and community. It comes from your teachers, them indicating whether they think you're good at this or not. And it comes from looking at the people around you. Okay. If you're in a group of people, all of whom are unsuccessful in school and who are like you, okay, you may be more willing to accept the belief of people who say that you people are not good at this. So segregated schools, okay, make it easier for people to persuade people that all the people who happen to be in a group in this class are not good at what we want you to do. Okay. It's not true, but it's easier to perpetuate that belief. I think segregated schools make it more difficult to effectively educate all of the children in the school. However, it's very clear that the voters and the political leaders in Forsyth County prefer segregated schools. There's not much doubt about that. The issue then is, what do the members of the community do to make sure that every child in every school gets the additional time and resources that are necessary for them to be successful, and the additional affirmation for them to believe that you can be good at this too.
And that just kind of dropped off. Do we have any agreement, any questions? I'm sorry, you're going to have to speak up since you're not at a mic. Who, Eric or Robert? Robert.
I would say, and I look at it from a relationship model, that it's not a color to me, it's the relationship that I have with another individual. And I guess I'm not going to speak for Forsyth County, I'm going to speak for myself. I'm not from this country. I came from Puerto Rico in 1965, and I had a hard time with relationships because I was the Spanish-speaking kid in the class. So it was about culture there, and I didn't have a relationship. I finally was able to form a relationship, which made all the difference to me. I've said this before, there were only basically 2 teachers turned my life around because they had this relationship that I hooked into, and they hooked into me. And so, as I was saying earlier to one of our panel members, relationships is a big one. We talk about, and Tony Wagner talks about the global achievement gap, about the 3 R's, the first 3 R's, reading, writing, arithmetic, and then we talk about rigor and relevance and relationship. But it seems like we concentrate a lot on the other ones, and we don't concentrate on that relationship model, which can make the world of difference. And I go back to thinking about sports, how those of us that played sports, if that coach has that relationship and says, we're going, we go, and we're going to succeed.
So how does your definition differ from Dr. Bell's? You called it relationship. He called it seeing people who encourage me, who look like me, who can help me. So are you all really saying the same thing,
and
or are
we're
you
probably
saying
saying
different
the same
things?
thing. And I was thinking, as he was talking about U.E. Brofenbrenner and his ecological model, and so I see the agreement there, so we're on the same note.
Okay. All right. That answer your question? All right. Eric, did you want to add anything? You're good. Okay. Sir.
My name is Bart Trescott. I'm an employee of Guilford Technical Community College.
If you'll raise that mic, you're a little taller than other people who've been in front of you.
Okay.
Just, that's good. You're good.
Once again, my name is Bart Trescott. I work at Guilford Technical Community College. I work in developmental studies, and I'm housed at the High Point campus. Quick comment and an easier question to answer than the last one. We work on the dropout rate essentially from the back end, because most of my students are post-dropouts who have children of their own. And our idea is that we can create success and break that cycle. Their children are more likely to be involved in education, and many of my students are also first-generation college students. In addition, I'm also attempting to bring our mentoring program, male mentoring program, to the High Point campus from the main campus, but I'm dropping the minority of the label because I feel that all males who are in developmental studies are probably at risk. So my question is, what else do you feel that the community colleges, particularly community colleges in North Carolina, can do to work on this problem, maybe to be more proactive rather than reactive?
All right. Whoever wants to go first.
The GED and the adult basic education program, somehow we got to look at that. And I know I talked to the president of the the community college system, Scott Rollins. And we actually talked about that because as a superintendent, it was easy for kids that were there at the school and didn't want to go or could not go any further for whatever reasons, and they'd go across the street to the community college, and it's a dropout against the school. And so I wish there was a way that we could, and I wish there was some conversation on that to perhaps clean that up and make that, you know, some workable agreement between everybody and go towards a certification or proficiency model or something like that instead of just going across and taking a GED, which these kids can do many times.
I'd like to. One of the things I think that community colleges can do is to expand their work in service learning, where you have your students in community college working with young people in elementary and middle school. I think that would be beneficial for all the parties involved. You would get your community college students actually applying some of the things that they're learning and give the young people in elementary and middle school more time on task and encouragement from young adults, which unfortunately many of the people in elementary school especially do not have.
First of all, thank you for what you're doing. I mean, that's a unique approach to a critical issue. We know here in Forsyth County, I'm sure it's across the state, that the remediation going on for the 2- and 4-year schools is just astronomical and unacceptable. And as I look out and I see some incredible educators out there tonight, we've put them in a box, whether it be administrators or teachers, to say, you got to get to this test. And so what I think we're doing is not focusing on preparation for that next level. So you're getting people out the door because that's what they're supposed to do. That's the metric that they're being pushed towards. And we have to change the conversation. We have responsibility as citizens to change the conversation, work with our school board members, and help them to advocate up to say, this is not about a test, this is about a preparation for life. And we know from all the studies that a test is not preparing people for life. What we need to do is look at our metrics differently. So what we're doing is preparing kids who are going to enter a community college situation, a workforce situation, or a 4-year college, who is actually prepared to be successful, and free the creativity of the teachers that are out there and the administrators who are incredibly brilliant to let them do that. Right now, we need to get our hands on and own the policy that is not working for our students.
All right, so we've got a couple of folks who have questions, and we're going to take care of these, and then we have another group of panelists. Sir.
Yes. My name is Sanford Danziger, and have a background as a medical doctor and a shrink, and my work now actually has to do with psychological aspects of education. Regarding the, I thought, very accurate comments that you made about the students needing to know that they can be successful and teachers needing to know that the students can be successful. You spoke about relationships a little bit. Are there successful approaches in fostering the Pygmalion effect in teachers so that teachers, in fact, know that their students can be successful? That's certainly been done in the laboratory. Are there practical examples where teachers can learn to see the success in students that they may not have seen earlier?
There is a large body of research that's related to the success of students and their teachers' perception of their own efficacy or effectiveness. If you, in fact, can persuade, educate, coach teachers to believe that they're good at what they do, okay, it generally follows that their students succeed. I think and if you listen to teachers, okay, and I think it may have something to do with the teacher dropout rate. The young woman that we saw in the video, okay, she was beginning to think that she didn't make a difference. And when teachers start to believe that they do not make a difference, they don't.
Yes, I understand that. I was wondering about the other side of it, the view of the students rather than the view of themselves.
You need to be able to put them in situations where they see the creativity, power, and effectiveness of their own students. Oftentimes, there are people in the culture of the building when a new teacher comes in that tells them certain things about the population that they will be working with. How do you inoculate teachers from that? I'm a good mentor, understanding the students in the context of the community they come from, getting to see them when they're in an environment where they are successful, creative, and productive, to not just see them as this one little one-dimensional person in their classroom, but a systematic strategy to do that. I wish we had one.
Dr. Landry.
I would like to add that one of the things that needs to happen is we need to quit trying or quit experimenting with so many programs and let teachers teach. I think they're being driven by the new program, the new fad that comes up this year. And then they have to throw everything out that they were working on. And then they have to start a new fad, and that goes out. And the other thing is that if you're dealing with a population, a group of teachers working in a school that is in trouble, don't mandate and don't demand so much paperwork out of them that when they, during their planning time or after school, they spend all that time working on the paperwork. They ought to be spending their time working on teaching. And I have 19 interns in Guilford County, and one of the things I hear from the people I work with in administration over there, those interns, is that they're teachers. And they are just under at all times because of the paperwork. And as they tell me, we had this problem, now we got to start a new program. And it's taken too much energy, and they need to get back to teaching. That's what they're there for, to teach.
All right, thank you. Sir.
My name is Keith Granberry. I'm with the Urban League, and our goal is to help kids in alternative schools. And I want you guys' opinion on some programs that have been successful in alternative learning in terms of teachers who are going into these schools where we know most of the young people are going to drop out of school. And what are some of the programs out there that you know about that would be helpful in making sure that these kids are prepared for the future?
All right, did you get the question? Or,
I did.
okay.
Thanks, Keith. You know, there's a lot of models. There's great work going on across our community and then in others. And I think one thing Forsyth has always been good at is looking for good models and trying to replicate them and improve on them. I reflect a little bit on what we're doing, and actually now that we've expanded to not only the 3 middle schools I mentioned, Philo, Mineral Springs, and East Forsyth, but also working at the 3 high schools, really 4 high schools with Atkins, Carver, North, as well as Parkland. One of the best things I've seen is really team teaching, is where you're taking those core critical foundation subjects such as an Algebra 1, and you're putting a couple teachers in a classroom. I think as the video showed is the biology teacher who struggled with kids who didn't need assistance and those who really did. And she was torn, I think, struggled with that. And if you can actually double team and invest in that way to allow teachers to focus energies around fewer students and students in need as well as those who need to be more challenged, then that's good. The other methodologies that I think are really positive is the coaching methods, whether it's be communities and schools or some more independent things that are out there. That's very good. The alternative schools, I know you guys have been working at Griffith, and you know, that's always a challenge. I think, as Dr. Bell alluded to, as we talked about, is there's a multitude of issues. And I think creating a wraparound situation where it's a multifaceted strategy versus a singular approach has to be taken and more intensively with those kids. And the last thing I'll just mention along that, sometimes we think that this is cheap. Oh, well, if we just do this. The fact is that we have to put significant resources behind this and make sure it matters. I think your quote from Jefferson, Dr. Bell, was appropriate. If the masses think this matters, they're going to invest in it. But we've got to get it to the point where people think this matters to them personally.
Well, and that's what I was going to segue into. We could talk about the moral piece of this, but it's been statistically documented that the high school dropout rate really has a direct effect on crime rates, entitlement programs. I mean, we can go on and on and on. Not paying taxes because they're not employed. It really does have an economic impact on everybody, and not to mention that everybody who owns a home and pays taxes, a piece of that goes towards the school system, so everybody ought to care. So is that what it takes to make people care about the high school dropout rate? The money? Or do we need to stick to the moral piece? And then you all have to go off stage so I can welcome my next group of panelists.
Well, I think I look at it from, I guess as a former superintendent principal, I look at it also from an economic perspective. As I tell people, if you look in a classroom and let's say you have 10 students there, and you get, let's say for the argument here, $7,000 per child to educate that child, and let's say 5 drop out of there, how much money did you just lose? Because when they drop out, somebody's got to pick them up, and that somebody's on the outside is we, the taxpayers, social services, working with Secretary Hayes in the Juvie system in Raleigh, the Juvie system's got to pick them up. Somebody's got to pick them up. They're not free loafing. They're free loafing it. No, not really. We're paying for them. And so how many teachers can you keep if you keep losing students? And that's one of the things I tell teachers. If you lose X number of students, and let's say that's 50, 100,000 plus, how many teachers can you keep? Because in this time that we're in where everybody's cutting back economically on the dollars, you can't keep everybody. So teachers, my argument, my statement to you is you got to figure out how to keep them in school. It's an economic measure now.
All right.
I do have one response about the question about the economic versus moral. The history in our nation, I would say have a limited number of examples where we've made moral decisions. I think we're supposed to learn from history. I don't think we've paid enough attention to informing people about how many people know how much it costs to incarcerate a prisoner as opposed to educate a student in public school.
And so we need to say that there is a direct corollary between dropout rates and imprisonment rates. We need to say that, right?
Yes, and we have the evidence to prove it. You push people out of school, and more importantly, you convince them that they have no value, and they're approached by a gang that says that you're valuable to us. what is the person going to do? They're going to associate with the people that says you're important to us. And eventually they'll end up dead or in prison.
And so I think the question is going to eventually be, because we are going to do some takeaways, is what can people do individually to impact this? Is this an institutional problem? Is it a community problem? Is it a family problem? Is it all of the above? And what can people do?
I would say two things. One, as a person, read to a child. Tell a child that how they do in school is important. You think that them getting an education is valuable. The second thing that I would do, as my colleague and friend Reverend Bass has taught me, is to organize.
Dr. Bell, let me just stop you there.
Yes.
When you say read to a child, they play video games all the time now. They don't, I mean,
This past,
talk to me about
this
that.
past Thanksgiving, I got to see the newest generation in my family. She's 2.5. And she was playing with her grandmother's iPad on a video game. However, when her grandfather picked her up to read to her, she sat still for the longest period of time that I'd seen since I was there. Okay. Children do love to be read to. Okay. They will play video games, but there's something about the association, the care, the attention. Okay. They like to be read to. And there's a tremendous amount of research from the Search Institute, thank you, about the importance of affirmative relationships with adults, with children. I mean, this isn't imagination. There's a large body of research that says it helps children avoid risky behavior. This is not somebody's imagination. Those are things we could do. And finally, if you're interested in education, organize to support it.
You've been very patient. Thank you.
My name is Diane Caesar, and I don't have a question. I want to share a story. It is about my son, who is now a lieutenant in the Navy, a graduate of Morehouse College. On the opening house of his 9th grade year, he was placed in AP classes. I went, I had a schedule. I walked into 3 AP classes and was asked, "Are you in the right place?" I was told this is AP algebra. And I could only assume that they didn't think my black son belonged here or that I couldn't read. It was one or the other. And I did not share this story with him, but can you imagine a young man walking into a class and you assume that he doesn't belong there? And if that starts in the 9th grade, maybe that's the reason 10th grade and 11th grade, and that's it. And that's just a personal experience.
I'm gonna ask Dr. Bell not to fly off to his seat, because I know I could tell by looking at it.
Unfortunately, I'm not surprised to hear that.
That didn't work so well.
I'm not surprised to hear that.
Yeah, I know. We've talked enough, I know. Does anybody want to comment on that before we change out the panelists?
It's a horrible story, and I know that, you know, it is reminiscent of what we need to be aware of, and to your point, Denise, about what can we do, is bring awareness to this. You know, these are the things that the community needs to know about. We need to understand the underlying issues and then bring them to the fore and deal with them in an honest dialogue, because these are things we can address. I mean, I am an incredibly hopeful individual. And, you know, whether it's what Dr. Bell said, read to a child, advocate for, you know, more investment in education and how we do education, but we can fix these things. We just have to be very intentional about it.
All right. All right, so we have 3 more people for you all to hear from, so you can't go anywhere. But right now, I'd like for you to give a round of applause to Dr. Ed Bell, Dr. Robert Landry, and Eric Aft. Thank you so much, gentlemen. I appreciate it. Joining me now on stage, Dr. Margaret Arbuckle, Executive Director of the Guilford Education Alliance. Please join us on stage. Rodney Ellis, Vice President of the North Carolina Association of Educators. I mean, like a teacher guy. All right? So if you've got questions for him. And Linda Harrill, President and CEO of Communities and Schools of North Carolina. I hope that you guys will allow them some time to introduce themselves and also give them some questions that they will appreciate. Margaret, you want to start? You should all have microphones right next to you, and they're all on.
Great. Well, good evening, everybody, and thank you for your patience in staying, and most importantly, thank you for your interest. The future of our country, the future of our state, the future of our communities is directly dependent upon the quality of education that we are providing for our children. Guilford Education Alliance is a nonprofit organization focused on Guilford County to connect the public into supporting the importance of public education. We see as our mission is to work to make support of public education the top priority for our community. We do a number of different kinds of activities and issue reports, one of which I brought a few copies of that's out there on the table, called Education Matters, Measuring the Community and School Success in Educating Our Children. This is a 5th year that we've put this report together, where we compare Guilford County's academic achievements of its students to the other urban areas, other urban districts in our state and our state, as well as measure the investment that our public is making in education in a number of different ways. Our previous panelists have said some very important things about why the dropout rate is one of great concern. And I'm going to speak to some ways in which we in Guilford County as a community and as a district are trying to address some of the issues that they brought forward. And first I want to thank Ed, I don't see him, for bringing up the issue of institutional racism. And as a white, middle-class, privileged person, I've had a very wonderful opportunity to be guided by a number of my African-American friends to have a deep understanding of what it means to have the experience for their child, this mother shared with us over and over and over. It is very real. So in Guilford County, one of the things that we have worked hard to address is how we can help people to understand their own bias and prejudice. And we have instituted what we call the Undoing Racism training. Some of you may know of that. And we bring that into our schools and very purposely help our teachers to work through their issues, their personal issues, and how they relate to the students in their classroom. Is it a magic wand? No. But I think that by doing this in a very purposeful way, supported by the Board of Education and certainly by the school administration, this current superintendent and his predecessor, has been one of the ways in which we are making some progress. Guilford County has the lowest dropout rate of urban districts, and it has been going down for the past 5 years as we've tracked it.
Okay, stop there. So I just want to emphasize this. There's a distinct difference between Guilford and Forsyth County, isn't there?
I don't,
yeah, there is. I've been on the DPI website. I was just going to let you answer if you wanted to, but since you didn't.
Well, in Guilford County, we have a majority-minority district. We have 123 schools. We have 72,000 students. We have 120 languages spoken in the homes of our children. You have a district that's about 45,000 students, and comparable numbers of schools to meet the needs of those students. in many ways, the history of our counties are very similar. We're both manufacturing-based economies. We have both had opportunities for people to drop out of high school and get a job for generations and be able to support a family. And we're at the place right now where, frankly, in Guilford County, we see Forsyth County being ahead of us in the reinvention of your economy. But we are all in this region, Triad region, being challenged, I think, to address the very similar issues.
Okay. All right, Rodney.
Good evening, everyone. And thank you for giving me the opportunity to be here. It's always a pleasure to return home to Winston-Salem State University. I'm a teacher. I'm an 8th grade language arts teacher.
Oh, you graduated from Winston-Salem State, didn't you?
A proud graduate.
All right, give him a round of applause.
Yes, ma'am. I'm a teacher. I teach 8th grade language arts, and I became a teacher because as a youngster, I did not have the luxury of PlayStation and Xbox and all of those type of things, so I fell in love with literature. And as an adult, I thought that if I could just share with my students the joy that is reading, the pleasure that I get out of opening up a book and going to different places and just enjoying a good book, that I could help them to understand the importance of them improving their reading skills and help them to grow and become quality individuals in our society. It did not take long for me to realize that as I went into the classroom, when I left Winston-Salem State, it was my intent to go in the classroom, close the door, teach, the students going to learn, and that was all there was to it. It didn't take me long to realize that that was not the case, because there are so many outside entities that impact what we do in the classroom as a teacher. There is someone who tells us who to teach, when to teach, where to teach, what to teach, if you teach, what you make for teaching. Somebody dictates everything they do in the classroom. And it's not all bad, but it's not all good. And I, at one point, became a bit frustrated with all the additional responsibilities that I felt like were really taking me away from what I truly wanted to do, which was to teach the students in my class. And it was challenging because, you know, one thing I noticed as a teacher was that each year I would have 3 levels of students. I would have one level that is reading very close to grade level, one class of students who was reading just below grade level, and one class of students who were reading well below grade level. And so it was a challenge for me as an educator to try to be creative in my approach to providing a quality education to these students. And I realized that, you know, for some of these students, and I see them on Facebook now, they all love me to death, they all friends of mine on Facebook, and it's almost to the child that I could stand back then and predict where that child was going to end up. And I see them now on Facebook, and I was not far off. There were some surprises, some pleasant surprises, but a lot of the students ended up exactly where you predict them to be based on the experience I had with them in the classroom. So I said to myself, you know, what can I as an individual do to help improve the quality of education we're providing to our students? And so I began to become involved with the North Carolina Association of Educators. I became a leader in the association, and I currently serve as the vice president for the North Carolina Association of Educators. And in this role, I have the opportunity to be involved in meetings with elected officials from the governor on down, to serve on task force and committees that look particularly at things such as the dropout rate. In fact, I was on a committee last year that spent, I don't know, almost the whole year looking at whether or not we should raise the compulsory attendance age. And you know, to hear the debate go back and forth between those individuals who are in the room about whether or not it's a good idea or not, well, the reality is you have to make education relevant for students, or it's not going to matter what age they are when they finally decide to drop out. And so with that in mind, and I think one of the charges for us today is to share with you what we think are some good suggestions that you might consider and some things that you can do as members in our community. So the first thing that I would like to say is that it is important that you vote. And that is the single most important thing that I can offer you. It is important to vote, because right now, folks, if you look at public education, in the past, I don't know, 4 or 5 years, the funding that has been available for us to be able to provide a quality education for our students has been significantly reduced. And the impact is this. You talk about needing to provide a quality education, a strong foundation for students early on. And earlier there was discussion about catching them in the 3rd grade. I would argue that we really need to get them in preschool. Yes, I would argue that we really need to get them in preschool.
I think there was a governor who did something about that a while ago. Somebody named
I'm going to get to that too.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. We need to get them in preschool and provide that strong foundation for them, and not just to make sure that they're able to read when they get to kindergarten and make sure that they understand colors and all of these things, but to make sure that they understand how to be a student in a public school. There's a major difference between just walking into a school and being expected to be able to perform and to conduct yourself as students in a classroom versus having had an opportunity to experience a pre-kindergarten class that has prepared you for that next step. So I think that we need to start there. I think that we need to consider developing.
It's killing me. You're going too long, Rodney.
Okay.
Okay.
Let me just.
All right.
Okay.
Are you about done?
Okay.
Okay.
I'll cut it off there.
Okay. No, really, just wrap up your thought because I got to get Linda in here.
I'm done.
Are you done?
I'm
Okay.
good.
But I'll come back to you.
Okay, please
Okay.
do.
All right. Linda, you're up.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here as well. I actually started my teaching career right here in Forsyth County Schools at Carver High School back in 1970. A long time I've been in education. I started as a regular ed teacher, then I went into special education, and now I'm running nonprofits. I guess I'm in irregular education. But the bottom line is I think that the work that I've done has really taught me a lot about the needs of our young people. One of the concerns I had when I was in the regular classroom is I had kids that really didn't fit special ed, but they really weren't thriving in the regular traditional environment either. So these were a lot of kids that we saw that were falling through the cracks. I was very fortunate back in 1989 to get involved with a national program that was really in its infancy called Cities and Schools. Later it actually became Communities and Schools because we realized that not every child who drops out lives in a city, that there are lots of kids all across this country who live in rural areas, suburban areas, and even rural within urban areas like you have here in Forsyth and in other counties in the Triad. And part of what we try to do, and I'm going to try to drill it down because I could get into, after spending 22 years at doing this all across North Carolina and actually nationally, is I'm really going to try to drill it down to what our basic beliefs are. And that is we want all children to have the same assets that we want for our own children and that I want for my grandchildren. I have 8 now under 8. And I want all children to have the same opportunity my grandchildren have and my children have, all of whom are college graduates. We know we can do this, but it's going to take a whole, and I hate to say it because it's been tossed around, but it does take a whole village, a whole community to wrap their arms around the needs of these children and families. We believe, basically, there are 5 things that every child needs and deserves. And if we can provide these things for young people, then we will see, and we have evidence to prove it. We've done national evaluations around it that show if young people have these 5 things in their lives, they will thrive and survive. And that is that every child needs a caring adult in their life. And that can come from it being a pastor in a church, a Sunday school teacher, a coach, a teacher, also volunteers. And that's where all of us in the community can say, have I got 1 hour a day that I could devote? Maybe it's just to go have lunch with a kindergartner because you don't know what's going on in that child's life. Or that you can spend just a few minutes asking a high school kid who has no conversation with their own family, what's going on in your life, so that you're learning to listen. And one of the things we hear back and forth from kids all the time is, I just want somebody to know me by name. I want somebody to know who I am as a person and to believe in me. The second thing is all children need a safe place, and that's a safe place to learn and grow, safe neighborhoods, but they also need to be able to go to school bully-free and not be picked on, not feel that they're being put down, not feel like that somebody is pushing them out the door or doesn't want them there, that they feel welcome and they be appreciated regardless of what their size, their color, anything about them, but they're known as individuals and they feel safe in the environments they're in. The third thing is that every child needs a marketable skill. We need to make sure that when our kids graduate, they can do something, that they didn't just sit in school for 12 or 14 years and come out and they have no skill set at all to get a job or to go into post-secondary education. We also need to celebrate our young people who decide they don't want to go to a four-year college or go straight into higher ed, but really want to work, and give them the opportunities to graduate and go on to learn a skill that they can use to get a job. Because for many of our kids, they've had zero money in their life for a long time. And so they need to have that opportunity to be able to do that. The fourth thing is we need to give children a chance to give back. Kids need to receive, but they also need to give. And we need to teach our children, I think Ed Bell mentioned this, the value of service, and service is learning, and to give young people a chance to do that. And then the fifth thing is that we neglect too often with our adolescents health issues, mental health issues, and basic health issues. We do a really good job for the most part, especially in our state, around getting kids ready to go to school healthy. But we forget that while they're adolescents and while they're young children, they still have health issues. And often we see absenteeisms in school, and we know that kids that don't go to school don't learn. If you're not there, it's an empty seat, you're not learning. And so a lot of times these come from basic health issues that have been neglected. So in communities and schools, what we try to do in a nutshell is to go into schools, working in partnership with schools, try to identify those young people that are most at risk of dropping out, and to surround those children with a team of caring adults who can bring those services, those wraparound services that Eric talked about, to surround those children, bringing a whole team of people in that can help provide those services based on that individual child's needs. Now, one of the things one of the lady that just spoke about her son, I kind of smiled when you were talking about that, because back in the day, as my grandchildren say, when I was growing up, they wouldn't let me take trigonometry because I was a girl. So things have changed. We're doing better in some respects, but we're not nearly where we need to be. The one thing I do want to say, though, is we are doing, and I want to credit the public schools with doing this, and teachers, and I think too often we get beaten up on the other side, is that we are working hard, and we have made progress. North Carolina moved off the bottom of the list, having the worst graduation rate in the country, to kind of middle of the pack. So we're getting better, but not good enough. But that means we need to take what we've learned that works, and you've heard several examples cited today of programs that work, things that we know work. And one of the things that I'm the proudest of in communities and schools over the 22 years that I've done this is the fact that we have finally gotten a huge national evaluation done so that we really know what works and we can prove the results. And we want people to hold us accountable. If we're not doing what we need to do, don't fund us. Or if we're not seeing the kids we're putting intervention programs with that are moving and making it, we need to change the interventions. We can't continue to fund things that don't work and continue to put resources in things that aren't having an effect. So we need to celebrate things that work, we need to invest in those things, we need to believe in our kids, and we need to give everybody in the community a chance to play a role, whether it's a faith community or a civic club or the Urban League, the United Way. We're all in this together if we're seriously going to address the issue of children that are not only not graduating, but are underachieving.
All right, thank you very much. So this is another opportunity for you guys to go to the mics, because this is another separate group of panelists that you will have an opportunity to ask questions of. Sir.
Good evening. I'm Kenneth Symington. I live in Forsyth County. And I want to thank Dr. Arbuckle for this very nice document. In fact, I want to say to the citizens of Forsyth County that it provides an opportunity for us to take a look at how we're doing in the Winston-Salem Forsyth County schools. In fact, I don't really have a question. I just have a couple of comments. On page 34, you'll see that we certainly have been challenged in Forsyth County related to dropout rates, related to graduation rates. But you can see on page 34 that we fare favorably. In fact, at least in most of the categories, we are near the top, and in some instances, if you look at the dropout numbers, you will see that we have made the most significant gains related to improvement in the dropout rate.
I'm sorry, what did you say your name was again?
Kenneth Symington.
Oh, as in with the Winston-Salem Forsyth County School System?
Yeah, Assistant Superintendent.
Superintendent of Schools. Okay.
Yes.
All right.
And
okay.
So, On page 36, for the last 4 years, we have been in the top 3 to 5 school districts in improving the dropout rate. And so I'd just like to draw your attention to page 36. It's a very fine document.
Congratulations.
And also,
well, here's my question for
Yes.
you, though. When I go on the DPI website, is every county requested or required, I guess is a better word, to report the same statistics?
it is a cohort graduation rate, and the dropout rate is calculated in the same way across the state.
Across the state, for every county?
For every county, for every school.
Okay. But is the high school graduation rate done the same way?
Exactly the same way.
Okay, all right.
Thank you.
I don't know, they'll fix it. I don't know, did you do something?
I want to challenge you that last year you had one more student than we did drop out. We still had 651 students. That is horrible. You had 652 drop out. Go for it.
We would agree that if you look at that 652, that's down from over 1,000, and so we continue to make progress.
Yeah.
And the only last comment I'd like to make is that we certainly want to thank the community in Forsyth County. There are lots of organizations that have joined us as we try to get to a 90% graduation rate in this community by 2018.
We cannot afford for a single child to drop out. So.
I don't know what that just meant, but I think I think that was still a good story, but I'm not sure. Did anybody else want to contribute to that? And Mr. Ellis saying, I'm not going to get into that. Okay.
They're going at it over that. No.
Okay.
I have to lean on the Forsyth side, so way to go, Dr. Simon.
Okay.
Let's go back here, and then we'll come back.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Barbara Pendergrass from the Lexington City School System, high school teacher. I'm not sure if these are questions or comments, but I can give you a good suggestion on how to fix that dropout rate. That'll be my last comment. Number one, voting. I like what the young man said about voting, because you vote those people who has a concern for education. And if we talk about economic development all night long, if you take one component out, which is education, you don't have any kind of development. And last but not least, the 3 R's, reading, writing, and arithmetic, that has been transferred to rigor, relevance, and relationship. And if we can't relate and show the students what's out there for them in the end, they're not going to buy into it. How do we fix that dropout rate? Is, I think our Governor Bourdeaux said it right. If we will update our models and the teaching standards that we have with technology. I think someone said that the grandchild was sitting doing the video game. We need to update the education, because that's what they're going after. They're not going to stay in school 12 years and come out just with the high school diploma. They're looking for some certifications from community college. Businesses are not going to hire them unless they have some certification. We need a big reform in our educational institution, because students have more technology in their pockets than we have as teachers to teach them.
All right.
Well,
Mr.
thank you
Ellis.
for your comments. And I'm going to talk about 2 of them. I'm going to first mention the comment. I'm going to go back to my comment about the importance of voting. Some of you may not be aware, and I mentioned earlier the importance of getting to students at the pre-K level. We have these programs, More at 4 and Smart Start. You may be aware that this year legislation was passed that would eliminate funding for both of those programs. Thankfully, the governor vetoed it, and some other people got involved who were able to get that funding restored. But that's funding that goes directly to those students who may not be able to afford any kind of pre-K education. That's one important piece. The other important piece is the fact that this year we again lost teacher assistants in our school buildings. We have, right now, we are down to just having teacher assistants in our kindergarten and first grade classrooms, when we really need them to, number one, be restored in the 2nd through 3rd and 4th grades. Number 2, we need to make sure that we have them in every school for every classroom in the K through 1st grade, and we do not have them there. So when I say to you that it's important that you go out and vote, it's because those things are happening because individuals in Raleigh are making the decision to actually implement budget cuts that result in loss of personnel and valuable programs in this state. And it is important for us to go and vote. And when I say go vote, I don't mean go in there and close your eyes and pick a candidate. I mean, be aware of what the platforms are, because there is no candidate running out there who does not have education as part of their platform. Familiarize yourself with the platforms, make sure that you understand their positions on public education, and go vote for those individuals who have the students of North Carolina's best interests at heart. And I'll stop there.
No, you're good. You're good. Sir.
My name's Dennis Lynch. I'm a practicing psychologist in Winston-Salem. I wonder if we're not missing a good opportunity here to look at our discipline in the school system as a way of addressing the dropout.
When you say discipline, are you meaning suspension or what?
Suspensions, short-term suspension. The schools have just gone through to examine this thing about zero tolerance. There was a big push for a while for zero tolerance. This was kind of in response to the Colorado shooting, and then the schools became very overzealous with respect to that. The state of Connecticut has put in place a rule now that they voted it in, the legislature voted in, that no student can be suspended from school. They have to find alternative ways of dealing with it. Of course, that rules out, I'm not speaking of somebody brings a knife or a gun to school or something like that where they put somebody in danger, slaves in danger. But most of the suspensions have nothing at all to do with that. They have nothing at all to do with, they have to do with talking back to teachers, cutting classes and things like that. If you look at the correlation in the Winston-Salem schools, if you take the high schools, and you look at the correlation between the number of times they utilize short-term suspensions and the cohort graduation rate, the correlation between the more times they use that, I mean, the fewer times you use that correlates, the fewer times you use out-of-school suspensions correlates 0.89 with the number of the level of graduation for the school. In other words, a school like West High School or Reagan High School, they have a rate of 10 short-term suspensions for the whole year. Atkins High School has 106. That means that every day of school, more than one student is being suspended from school.
Well, I think there has been some research that has really been done between even the third grade reading level, suspension, dropout rate. I mean, there's been some linear research.
We may be missing a good opportunity, though. We may be missing a good, if that correlation is true, 0.89 between the number of times suspension is used, it's an inverse relationship between the number of times.
Who wants to address that?
I'll talk a little bit about it because my background has been in alternative education previously, but I think one of the things, you're right, there is a very strong correlation between kids suspended. It becomes a revolving door. Kids get suspended, they come back. The problem that got them suspended was never addressed. When they're sitting at home and not dealing with what the issue was, if it's an anger management issue, or in many cases, the number one issue for suspension in this country is not coming to school. So we answer that by kicking them out of school. Now, that's not very thoughtful in thinking about making sure that we're addressing the issue. But one of the things I think that can be a remedy is, first of all, you're absolutely right. We need to examine zero tolerance. The second thing is, though, I would argue that we need to create, and I think the gentleman from Urban League mentioned this as well, we need to create different kinds of alternatives for young people. That it's either stay in regular school or get kicked out and go to an alternative school or get kicked out and go to no school. So one of the things that we really do need to do, and there are a lot of districts across this country that are doing an amazing job of creating new small schools, new kinds of schools that address individual needs of different kinds of young people. And so I think you're absolutely right. We have to examine a lot of our policies. Not only is the policy about zero tolerance, but some of our attendance policies actually increase dropout rates because it punishes children that are from low-income families as opposed to upper-income families. So there are lots of policy issues that have to be addressed, but I also think there's some real practical things as communities we can start really taking a look at. Whoever decided that you had to be in a big fancy building to be schooled, I question that, because we know that there are schools in some really interesting places that are just as good as students that go to big fancy schools. And we got a lot of empty buildings around. So can we take some of those facilities and turn them into places of learning for young people that give opportunities?
I would just like to reiterate both what Linda has said and what the gentleman from the floor said. We in Guilford County have looked hard at the issues around suspension, and in particular the disproportionate minority rate of suspension, and have begun to try to address that. Our school board has examined the code of conduct, and the number one issue that has resulted in suspension has been insulting behavior or disrespectful behavior described in those kinds of terms. And if we examine that in terms of that being a infraction that would result in suspension, children who are suspended from school are out of school. And that is not what we want. We want our children in school. We want them in school more rather than less. And the alternative schools, in terms of smaller schools, magnet schools, middle colleges and early colleges, which, you know, it's a wonderful list and across our state of districts that are beginning to use those alternative learning environments particularly for our higher school students. And I think that is a way for us to be able to address this very serious issue.
I'll be quick, but I do have to say this, folks. In my opinion, suspensions are a cop-out. It's a good way to get a kid out of your class that you have yet to do what my colleague mentioned before, which was establish a relationship with the student. If you establish relationship with your students, they are more likely to stay in class, more likely to be respectful to you, and you're better able to provide them with an education. Just like labeling them and putting them in special ed classes. These are things that we have to really, really look at in terms of what the end result is, and that's kids being out of school or kids being in classrooms where they are not being challenged.
Well, and this is an incredibly complex topic, and I know that there are lots of reasons that lead up to the dropout rate, and that's why eventually we're going to pull this thing around in just a couple of minutes and give you guys some takeaways, because, again, it's complex. But we want to try and give you something that you can actually do to drive down that rate. Representative Womble, how are you?
Very well. I'm Larry Womble, and I serve in the legislature. And first of all, let me thank you all for having this forum, talk, dialogue, or exchange of ideas, or either whatever term we want to use it. I think it's something that we should have been doing a long time ago. And not only FDD, but I do want to thank the panelists, too, for you coming out and being with us. And quite naturally, the people here in the audience. I, too, like Rodney, I'm a proud graduate of Winston-Salem State University. And I'm glad you're having this on this historic campus, FDD. The topic, the high school dropout rate, that's sometimes a little, I would say, misleading. Many of our students are pushed out, and some are even kicked out. And so as a result of that, then that signifies to me the value. You can tell a society by the value it places on education. And by placing a high value on education, then you need to bring the resources, all of the resources, there to address it. In other words, we have to treat the holistic child, not just parts of it. And there are many of them. And I spent 32 years And many times you have to do these things before you can even start teaching them. Because they're hungry, many of them come hungry. Many of them, and those of us in this community can tell you some stories that sometimes students succeed in spite of everything else because they have been instilled in them. I'm a firm believer that there are two ways that you teach. One by precept, and the other one is by example. And as a result of that, if you look back through the history of this society, Dr. Bell hit it on the head. Those isms are still present with us today. And he outlined a few of them: classism, racism, sexism, economicism. All of those, to some degree, are still with us until we make up our mind that we really want to have a serious, frank, and honest discussion about education and dropout rate. We have to have that serious discussion about this society, because the education reflects the kind of society we live in. And let me also, as I take my seat, let you know that Rodney, by being an educator himself, and by us both going to Winston-Salem State, and there are a lot of other individuals who went to Winston-Salem State, if, in fact, that we do not do what our civic duty is, then the problem will always be here. What is that? You can see that who controls an education is the legislature. As strange and as honest as I could be, it's the legislature.
That would be you.
We make the laws.
That's right.
And whenever we make the laws, whatever the professional educator says, a lot of times we don't take that into consideration. I'm here to tell you. Because too many of us, I may be saying that we want to, but too many of us look at the bottom line. Instead of investing in education, here in the last few years, we have divested from education. More at 4 is gone. We also have what we were trying to do with the dropout rate. Representative Earlene Parman, from right here in Winston-Salem, was appointed the director of the dropout and was given funds. This session, all that money was taken away. So we have to look at, I'll take a step further as I take my seat, ladies and gentlemen, than what Rodney took it. Vote yes, but you must vote for those people who are concerned about our students today and our students tomorrow. And just don't go on what they say. Check the track record out. Because this year, this session, we have done some of the most draconian cuts to education that we've ever done in the history of the state of North Carolina. And we're going to see the effects of this for the next 2 or 3 years immediately. So I caution you, as an educator and also as a legislator, be careful who you vote for, because you might get it. Congratulate you all again on this forum.
Thank you so much, Representative Womble.
I just wanted to reiterate your statements, or underline your statements, Representative. North Carolina, which for generations has prided itself in being a leader in education, a leader in the creation of the New South, a leader in education innovation, is now 50th of all states in funding public education. 50th.
So, we have one more person at the microphone. We are unveiling our takeaways here. So we have about 6, I think, from our panelists, but we want you all to add to them. And then Greg is going to tell you about that Facebook, Twitter, something that I don't know anything about, where you can actually go and send them to your friends so that they can make a difference as well. Yes, ma'am.
I'm Rhonda Gordon, and what I wanted to say was that one of the things that's missing in this whole discussion, but I see that it's kind of sort of up there, is bringing the family back in. Because no matter what, if we don't have the buy-in from the family of origin, we can talk as professionals all we want. That's not going to make as much an impact as getting the family to believe in the importance of education.
All right. Okay.
I would absolutely agree with you, but I think one of the things we also have to remember is not all families look alike, and especially in today's world, families are very different. And so we have to go where the families are, not just pick up the phone and say, oh, well, I'm going to do a conference today, a teacher conference at 3 o'clock, be in my school. We have to figure out how do we go to where the families are? How do we accommodate their schedules? Because so many of our kids that are underachieving and not doing as well as they could, their families are working 2 and 3 jobs just to put food on the table. So we've got to figure out a different way, using technology not only for our kids, but how do we teach our families? Instead of having to travel across town to go to a conference in many cases, what about using Skype or some of the technology we have for both sides, the families and the parents? Because it's all about communication. And so I think you're absolutely right. Families are critical to helping their young people succeed.
Yeah, and just real quickly, one of the things that I was going to suggest that we need to do is to, again, look at developing family literacy programs where we are training parents how to read and engage their students in the literature so that it's not just listen to me call the words or you call the words. It's about reading for comprehension and understanding, because that's really what they're going to be tested on. The other last comment I do want to make, and let me just remind you also that for a program like this, it would take funding, which we don't have. And the other piece was that I did want to go back and just make this final comment about the discipline issue. One thing we need to be able to do is to invest more in our educators being able to have much better classroom management skills. Professional development is key, but I say that just to also point out that professional development was cut in this year's budget too, so again, vote.
Not only vote, but run for office. I mean, you know, I want to have choices in who I get to vote for. And so as a community, we have to step it up. If we want to change things, we got to be part of the solution, not sitting on the sidelines. We've got to be in the game. And so part of tonight's takeaway is, what can you do? Get involved in your local school board. Go to the meetings. Make suggestions. Volunteer to be on committees. Volunteer to be a volunteer. But do something that gets you involved in what's going on in your local community and your local schools.
See, we're already typing in your other takeaway, Linda, because we're going to have a whole list here that people will be able to go to our Facebook page or to our website, Greg.
Well, what we want to do is make this as easy as possible for everyone in this room that will leave here feeling motivated and feeling hopeful that they can affect some change, that you can share that however you share things in this day and age. If you would like to go to our Facebook page and post it there, we will get it that way. For those of you who do that, if you are Twitter users, tell your followers and mention us. We're at WFDD. If you have other online presence that you deal with, just do it and mention it. And we'll be collating all of this through the wonders of automatic searches. We'll find it if you mention us in this. And we'll collate all that together, get it online. If you don't live in that digital world, talk to your friends. give us a call.
I was going to say, can they call somebody?
I was just about, absolutely.
Oh, thank God.
You can call the station, 758-8850. Ask for me. I'm Greg Keener. I'll take your comments. I'll take your ideas. If you want to email the station, wfdd@wfu.edu. If you want to stop by, we're in the little yellow farmhouse on the campus of Wake Forest University right by the track stadium. But the key in all of this, what I want to get across, we're going to do this brainstorming list. You're going to have things you can leave and do. Tell people you're doing it, and then do it. We want to pull these things all together. We want to put them on our website because we want everyone out there to know there are things you can do, and the folks that showed up tonight are going to go do them.
Yeah, because it does no good to talk about it if we're not going to do anything about it. Yes, sir, and this is the last one. Well, wait a minute, Larry, hang on. This man beat you to the mic. Okay. Yes. Uh-huh. All right, thank you so much. You got that? Mm-hmm. All right.
Yeah, it's good. I'm glad you have Facebook and you have Twitter and you have all these other things. But so many of the people that I represent don't have this kind of equipment. They don't even have computers. So many people that I represent in East Winston don't have this kind of equipment.
Well, that's why I asked if they could call somebody.
Sure.
At the rec center. A lot of them are hanging out at, we get them at the church. We need to get this list out where the truckers used to say the rubber really hits the road to those people that are not here tonight.
That's a good idea.
I think formatting this all into a document that can be printed and left, and we'll work with our friends at Winston-Salem State to get that as many places as we can. It's a fine idea. Sure.
McDonald's, coffee in the morning. I know, we got you. All right, so I'll be calling you to come by and get a whole bundle of them. Well, no, not tonight. Give me a couple of days. Okay, are we ready?
Absolutely.
Okay. All right, so let's go back up to the top and see what we have for the takeaways, because I think we still have some folks here. All right, so you can see what Dr. Landry wrote, engaging the Hispanic Latino parents into the social. I think this is kind of capturing what people have said. Encouraging students to dream. I don't think, did we get into, Dr. Landry, the whole problem about the dropout rate? There's another issue related to Latino students. Back up, Greg. I'm sorry, I think I missed something. Okay, so Linda said schools cannot do it alone because so many issues impacting student learning are non-academic and require focus on homeschool and community. All right. So multiple partners are needed. Okay. I didn't know that was your middle name, Margaret. Okay. He just zoomed past that. Back up, Greg. Okay. Promote the importance of reading. We heard about that earlier. Yeah. All righty. Eric from the United Way, advocate for waste create true equity of resources, including PTA funding. This is stuff we know, but it's something that everybody can do. This is the great thing about it. Students must be able to learn by the end of the 3rd grade. Lord, there should be, okay, by the end of the 3rd grade. That's not good. We got to fix that before we put it out, don't we? Good Lord. Okay. Let's fix that like right now. Thanks. Okay, we need people to diligently seek information about candidates. Okay, we've talked about that. That's you, Rodney. Voting, get involved in your local school board, chamber of commerce, volunteer program. Okay, All right. All right, so what I need, all right, I have people leaving, so you all don't have any suggestions. Okay, the people who are left, I need your suggestions. I need 4 or 5 thoughts. Because we only have what? We have like all of our panelists have contributed, correct?
We have about 8.
8? Okay, give me some more. Really? Okay. Between the two of them. Not with the students, but between each other. Got it. Okay. All right. Anybody else? You have a thought? Got it. Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. Okay, yes, sir. Okay, we'll need some help with that, because what organizations would that be? Because it would depend on the problem, obviously. Okay, but we can work on that. All right, thank you. Sir?
I want to thank you for this discussion tonight, and I want to encourage additional discussions, because following up on the issue of having people in office that make the decisions that are beneficial to the society at large, I think these discussions precede the voting. The voting is very important, but we have to elevate our thinking. We elect our officials, and we send the legislators to the office that make the decisions on our behalf. So we have to have more of these discussions, so that we're really thinking not so much as economically as one person meant, but more morally about what our responsibilities are to educate the child. There's a moral responsibility there for that to happen. And so I think discussion precedes the voting. A point of personal privilege, if I might. I think Rodney is an example of the educational system working well. He was in one of my early classes.
I had a feeling he knew you. Okay, thank you so much.
Voter education sessions, is that what he said? Community-wide voter education sessions?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay.
And this may seem kind of nebulous, but I think one of the things, the way in which we change our education system is to expect it to do better. We expect our children to do well. We expect them to learn to read. We set up expectations, and when you set up expectations, you get results. And as a community, we need to say, we expect our children to be successful in school and stay in school.
I would agree with you, but I would add another piece to that. We expect it, but then what are we going to do to help? Because I see too much blame going on in education all across the state. We want to blame somebody else for the problem. It's the parents' fault. If they just send us better kids, we'd have better schools. If we had better teachers, we'd have better schools. But it really is all of us taking responsibility, that we each have a role to play. And I think if there's a takeaway tonight, that's what it is. That not all of us are going to volunteer. Not all of us are going to be a bookworm. Is that what you said? Sorry if I got it wrong. But they're all things all of us can do. And I think if nothing else, talk about education. I want to give you a real good example of this. This is a rural county, but I bet you'd have it here too. The headline in the newspaper was about the dropout rate in this particular county being the highest in the state for that year. So we happened to be in a little restaurant where there were a lot of local people sitting around. Not one person in that restaurant read the front page about the dropout. You know where they turned? To see how the high school football team did the night before. So if we're really going to be serious, we've got to make education and academics as important to us as the football scores or the basketball scores. And we've got to be willing to make that same kind of commitment of time.
Okay. All right. Did you have another takeaway?
I'm horrified to hear that we're 50th in education funding this year. And I hope WFDD makes that pronouncement loud and clear, you know, as part of a follow-up from this.
I don't know that I heard that in our stories. We had so many, but that did not escape me. So I try not to micromanage, but I will drop that piece of information on the news department tomorrow.
And I think it's really short-sighted when you think of wanting businesses to come to North Carolina. Whoa. Businesses, you know, want to have good education for their
That
children.
is always the number one thing they look for.
Absolutely.
It's always at the top of the list.
And if I might just add, we are 50th in per pupil funding and 47th in teacher salaries. So I don't know, just had to put that out there.
That adds to it.
What are our values here? Yeah.
That's interesting. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, my comment is kind of personal. I'm an educator by profession. I've worked for children for 24 years. And as I look at the school systems today, starting at kindergarten, we really need to have teachers that care, that want to be there. Teachers that are willing to go the extra mile. We talk about the student not wanting, the parents not doing enough. But we need to have the teachers who are paid to be in the classroom, to teach kids and want to teach kids. I have a daughter that's an educator, and I know the struggles she goes through in a high school in Greensboro. And I have a kindergarten grandchild here in Winston-Salem. And I know what's going on in the school systems, and sometimes our teachers just don't care. They don't want to be there. So if we can have some policy, and I know there are educational standards for teachers, and they have to go through extra training, but still there needs to be some accountability held on that individual teacher to help the students learn.
Thank you very much. We appreciate that. All right. Anybody else have another takeaway for Greg to type in? Really quickly, and then we're going to draw this to a close. This has been a robust conversation, and I appreciate it. Yes, sir.
Another suggestion, we need to encourage children to read. And I'll just tell you from my own experience, and when I was in the second grade, apparently I was not a very good reader, and I can tell you a story about that. But when I was in the third grade, my teacher had a bookshelf of books in her class, and I found some books on that shelf that interested me, and that's what, since I was interested in the subject of the book, I was willing to read it, and that's what made me a good reader. So I think that we need to encourage children to read, and the way to do that, I think, is to give them books that they will like, whether it's basketball or whatever subject. And you never know what subject is going to interest a child. But I think that's a key to encouraging children to read.
I agree. Thank you. Yes, sir.
My name is Lawrence Moore, and I was really motivated when I heard that you were having this evening. Kids are dropping out for a whole lot of reasons. Many reasons they're dropping out. But one of the main reasons they're dropping out because they don't have a relationship that they should have with a parent or a guardian because kids don't just wake up one morning and say, I'm dropping out of school. They plan these things. And they plan these things because most time the parents don't have, or the guardians don't have, a personal relationship with that child. Now, if they don't have that personal relationship, now what is a personal relationship? Not because you are buying the food and the clothes and got a place for the child to live, but a personal relationship is if that child's got any question, I don't care what it is and what it's all about, they will come to you first. They will come to you. If you teaching them and training them the way they should be, they'll come to you first. If they don't come to you first, they're going to get the information in the street, and it's going to be not the right thing. When you go on the internet and you listen to the radio and hear about all this dropout, what we're going to do, you're going to have to build bigger jail houses, bigger penitentiaries. Somebody's going to have to start doing something real fast.
Well, that's why we're having these takeaways, because I think everybody has pretty much concluded what you've just said, that there are just a lot of things that have coalesced and have, resulted in this dropout rate. But at some point, we've got to do something about it. And not all of it's real tough. You can just pick one thing. And whether it's being a mentor, or whether it's your church or community-based organization, or whether it's in your own family, or whether it's somebody becoming a teacher, there's something everybody can do. And I think that's why we're going to put these takeaways together and disseminate them and distribute them so that everybody can do something if they so choose.
I just have one other thing to say.
Yes, sir.
I come from a sales background. I wrote this book called Don't You Quit School. Life is not a rehearsal. I want you to have it. I'm going to leave it with you. You can go over it, and you can, it may be a benefit to you, to some child, someone going to school. If you don't have a kid in school, you ought to have one of these anyway, because you might know a child that needs one to be motivated to stay in school.
All right. Well, thank you so much. Thank you. All right. So we have a list of takeaways. We're going to make them available for distribution, and hopefully that you all will take a tip from one of these takeaways and make a difference in North Carolina's dropout rate. Have you all learned something this evening? Yeah, there have been some factoids out there. Ah, my goodness. Thank you. Okay, give us a bigger round. Give us some more love than that. I'd also like to have you give a round of applause to our panelists, Dr. Margaret Arbuckle, Rodney Ellis, Linda Harrill. I see Robert Landry is still here, Eric Aft is still here, Ed Bell is still here. You all stand up. Come on now, stand up, stand up. And they will be out front if you have any questions for them. And Greg, do you have any closing comments about what they can do?
You know, I think we've all been at the staff and with these panelists researching this issue and doing all we can to understand it as best we can in advance of tonight. And I think the one thing we hope is that everyone leaves here understanding, if you didn't already, the severity of the issue, but probably as important, if not more important, knowing there are things you can do. So I encourage you to look for this list in all the ways we will disseminate it. I encourage you to check out the grant that helped put this together, American Graduate. You'll see links to that on our website. There's some resources there, and we hope to put together more resources, this list, the coverage we've done, and put it out all the ways we can, because we want to be a driving force and doing what public radio does best, and that's illuminating and bringing the community together and sharing good ideas. And I thank you all for being a part of that tonight.
Thank you all for coming. Thank you for your time. We appreciate you.